All righty, we will begin our work session today. First up for discussion on the budgetary presentation, we have the Dickinson County Historical Society with their 2026 budget. You want to come on up? Get your name and your address and we'll get into it.
Okay. Now, do you want my personal address or do you want the historical society address?
Whichever one you want to give, but I think either one's fine.
Either one's fine. Okay. Well, my name's Austin Anders. I live at 302 South Garfield Street, Enterprise, and I work at the Dickinson County Historical Society, which is 412 South Campbell Street. So, obviously, you guys got a letter. We did include pictures of the building that is now complete. And we definitely want to extend our appreciation for the county for helping support putting up Heritage Hall.
In here.
You need a copy?
Well, I've actually got it. If you put in the budget binder there, it's kind of right towards the
Yeah, I see.
at the historical center.
Go ahead, keep going, bud.
Okay. So the letter I sent you addresses some of the things that we've had kind of going on here recently. Probably as far as the budgetary concerns that we have here, we had a $10,000 increase in our insurance, which I know everybody's insurance seems to be going up. So at the kind of the very end, we're going to ask for our annual $70,000 plus a little bit of help towards the covered cost of insurance on that. You know, obviously we hold the county records. We have the vault there for a reason. We have to insure it, make sure that we keep and protect those county records. So the Heritage Hall is complete after a year's worth of work. Ken can attest to the work that went on that, both volunteers and otherwise. And I believe the money's been well spent, and we have it open. We've already had some activities in there, and definitely the community is taking a look at it and is going to take a hold and really use it over the next several years. Does anybody have questions on the building itself or any concerns on that facet?
I don't think I do. What was the total price trying to get that building done?
So when we actually had a bid to actually have a contractor come make it turnkey about 3 years ago, that was $250,000. We're at $219,000.
Yeah.
So a lot of volunteer work saved a lot of money. If we had to spend that kind of money today with the current inflation rate, we were looking at close to $300,000. So we feel pretty good about what we were able to accomplish.
Okay,
We got a few more added extras that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
sure. You think, I guess I don't know about this. Can you talk to me about it a little bit?
So back in 2012, the board voted to expand the museum.
Okay,
It actually was supposed to take up our entire parking lot. Of course, as things happen and things change over the years, we've had to make it to something that we knew that we could accomplish. And we had a previous director that actually poured the concrete base for this with the idea that money would come in. Unfortunately, he left us shortly after he poured the concrete. And of course, COVID came and hit. We had a board that didn't help us out really at all. We had to build community trust back up in the Dickinson County Historical Society, starting with small projects, things that we had to do maintenance-wise around there. And then we got to the point where both financially, and we felt like with the community that we could actually build this building. The building itself, the idea behind it is extra restrooms, particularly for when we have school groups come through or bus trips come through. We have that extra capacity there. We could use it for our historic classes that we have in the wintertime. We could use it for our pioneer camp. We have Memories of the Prairie that we do, 5 or 6 of those a summer, where we have special speakers come in and talk about different aspects of history, whether here in our county or just in the state of Kansas in general. And then we will also rent this out to any local community members that need a space.
sure, okay, thank you.
How many does it hold?
Capacity will be 85.
Are you getting much usage out? Do you have people that have
So as of
just rented it or the fee to rent it? And
Well, we just had a board meeting to actually vote to set all those prices. Like I said, it's been a year-long deal. We finally just finished it up enough to where we can start renting it out. We actually have a graduation that's going to be in there this Saturday. Clovia House over in Manhattan. They go out and do different fundraising deals for their particular house. They want to rent it in October. I have another person that I'm trying to hold off just a little bit so that I can get them the information that is interested in renting as well. So I've already got 3 renters. As far as the Historical Society's use, we did use it for Old Fashioned Christmas. We had a custom knife and blacksmithing group come in here about a month ago and use the facility for their annual meeting, and then they used their blacksmith shop for some of their activities. So.
As far as people going to the center compared to other years, what type of traffic? Because I got historical members are free.
Yep.
But do you still have schools coming in, or?
We still have schools coming in. We're down this year from last year. Last year we had almost a record at 17 schools coming in. This year we have 8 coming in. And part of that could be attributed to the kind of unknown of what's going on with the state and the finances and things like that. So as far as this year is concerned, the farthest school we've had come away is Otis Bison Middle School. We have 4 school tours this week alone. McKinley will be coming tomorrow to have their school tour. So we're getting not only here locally, but obviously fairly far away.
So is that income generating? I mean, I know you want for the experience too, and schools are faced with tight budgets. And I mean,
It does, but it's not, I mean, it's $3 a kid.
mhm.
And so you get a little bit of income there. We do not charge a teacher and an assistant. We feel that it's very important that they are able to contribute into with the school tours themselves. But any adult after that, it's $5. So.
You don't mind me interrupting for just a second?
Yes.
Last summer, the Sunflower Summer Program that the state had where people could go through the museums, Eisenhower Center, the Abilene Smoky Valley Train, and then our museum participated in that. And that was a really big deal for us. We had a busy summer because of that. I'm going to say because of that. Likely. They scaled that back for this summer, but it's still going to be it starts later and it's going to end a little sooner so that they can save some money on it. But we had just a ton of big groups of, families of 4 or 5, maybe 6 kids sometimes
Oh, yeah.
that would go through, and they probably wouldn't have done it if they would have, had to pony up the money themselves, because some of the situations where, you can tell when people are a little bit strapped for cash, but
Mhm.
it was a big deal for us, and I know the train folks will tell you that it was a big thing for them. Assuming it was for Eisenhower Center, although they were on a different plane than the rest. That's a different deal. But I just thought I'd mention that because that was a pretty big thing for us, and we did have a lot of traffic last summer.
And I'm sure you and the board are aware, I mean, you want to generate income.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that is one of your revenues because your overhead has increased.
Oh, yes.
And yet the other thing is families are looking for value, and, especially if someone brings 2 or 3 kids or so, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
so do they pay extra to ride the carousel, or that's part of it, or?
Last year, we just did admission. The state wouldn't allow us to do the carousel necessarily. It's just strictly on what your mission is to get them in.
Not just,
Yeah, not just, yeah. And the other
that's
fact,
a great
yeah,
fraction.
the other factor that goes into this is what they spent, why they were here. Rod Ruffle serves on a board, of course, he's part owner in Amanda's Bakery. And she says, I just can't believe how many people we had this summer. And a lot of them were coming in saying, the reason we're here in Abilene is because of the Sunflower Summer Program. And so despite what some other people would say up statewide, it did impact Abilene significantly. And it did impact Dickinson County significantly as well. So I don't know if, from your guys' position, I don't know if there's much you can do other than maybe write a few letters and stuff on behalf of our county, but anything we could do to help bring revenue into our community is obviously a great asset. One of the figures that they were showing, for every dollar that the state spent on that, they got $5 in return. So, that's pretty significant when you take that times how many people showed up. So.
Well, it's kind of a hidden gem, and I mean, I think people that go there know, you know, it's a great facility, so.
Okay. Lynn and Ron, have you talked to Kenny about the archives and kind of the reasoning why behind you guys give the 70,000 beyond just some of the things we've talked about today?
It'd be good for you to review, because we approved the budget and then there's so many groups, so, yeah.
Okay, so part of the reason why they donated to us is back in about 1985, we built what we called the vault. That holds tax records, all the county court records. We hold a lot of abstracts, a lot of kind of sacred documents to our county. They built the vault. It's tornado proof. It's actually basically a concrete block with brick around it. And we have officers that come in every once in a while looking for old court records. Obviously, we have the public coming in looking for their houses, things like that. And it's definitely something that gets utilized all year round. So that is probably, at least from what I understand, the biggest reason why you guys donate to us.
Definitely.
So,
I did know that, but thanks for,
okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. And by all means, if any one of you three or even over here would be interested in coming and stopping
I
by,
would.
I'm around. So, yeah.
I would like to do that. In
Yeah.
fact, I brought it up with Janelle. I don't know if I said it to Marcus, but I'd like to visit these organizations once a year as well, just to have a site visit,
Okay.
to be a little bit more responsible, you know. If we're gonna give you money, we ought to come see what's going on.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of my thought, so. And I'll be, do you guys have any other questions for him, or do you have any questions for us?
Not necessarily at this time.
I went through your budget. I mean, there's some ups and downs in there. I know you guys, things are changing, but you're coming back responsibly to us. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing your due diligence. You're not coming back requesting more money, even though some of your expenses went up. Like you're running a good organization. So for me, I like where you're at.
Appreciate hearing that.
My goal this year was try to do a 10% cut. You guys are well under that. So as far as I'm concerned, I think you proposed a good budget, but
Okay.
And just kind of an aside, Lynn talked about getting people there because that is, generates income to keep us going. But we got the donation, sizable donation of John Gruber's toy collection. And Ron Schaus and Greg Wilson and some other folks have basically funded putting up a building. So the building is there. We don't have anything in it yet. We just kind of got a lot of projects going on.
yeah.
We're hoping that will be enough of an attraction. I mean, if you have a museum and don't change things, it's hard to keep people coming back, to it. So we're hoping that that'll be a big draw. And then this fall, we hope to have a kind of a major open house kind of a thing to introduce people to that building, plus our new building that we added on to. And we're getting a mural painted onto the west end of that building. They're actually setting up scaffolding today. So we're trying to freshen the thing up and trying to keep it looking nice so that we can get people. Once they get there, they tell us that, we had no idea that all this was here. So we're trying to get ourselves out there to where we attract more people in, which benefits the community, benefits us. It's kind of a win-win-win for the county, the city, and for us too.
Couldn't agree more.
I think that each entity in the community is very important, connects to each other, and just to keep everything supported and going, we all benefit. I think you guys did a great job with that.
Thank you.
You reached out to I guess those tractors are mostly green.
He's got a fair number of different
Yeah.
colored stuff, which surprised me a little bit.
Okay.
We've known John for a long
I
time.
knew the competition, so have you reached out to any of the like John Deere corporate office or anything like that to kind of say we're going to do something kind of special?
We've talked to Prairie Land Partner, and they're willing to donate $1,000 in kind of toy tractors, because one area that we want to put in there is for kids, so that they kind of get familiar with what agriculture is. We like to have a wall with, why do we plant these crops? What do they use for? Things like that. We like to have an area, and John Deere kind of brought this up. They have a little play thing, and it's just a tractor, and it has the different pieces of a tractor, and you click on it and it explains what a tire is and why it's important, why the cab's important, things like that. And so we like to find some kind of interface there for the kids so they can learn not only about the equipment, but about the crops itself and why is it so important to the state of Kansas that we keep agriculture going. So it's going to do more than just educate the people just coming off interstate.
We knew that if we had kids coming through there, and most of John's stuff is display quality kind of stuff. So
Yes.
it's gonna be behind glass,
Never out of the box.
but you know, you can't have a
They gotta play with something.
5-year-old kid
Yeah.
through there. So our goal is to have a corner of the building set up so they can carpet farm. And we'll have toys there that they can actually
Parents
hands on themselves with.
Yep.
Like, we won't worry about whether they get beat up a little bit or whatever. But so
You might.
Do you have rebuilt tractors, Ken?
They're going to donate. Part of that is toys.
You know, Ken's got a really cool rebuilt one. You might call Caniquip too. They're in the county too now.
Okay.
They might give you some tool. I guarantee they would if they know if John Deere's doing it. I guarantee they'd get more displays than what I thought.
Okay.
So they're over there in Solomon.
Give them a holler.
I would. That sounds interesting. I like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people,
That's great.
ag's pretty cool to me, but I know maybe they're not to everybody, but I like that you're trying to put out an effort of
Mhm.
showing, it shows us who we are.
Okay.
Culture here.
And preserving that.
Exactly.
So,
Okay.
anything else?
I know you got insurance coming out. You guys got your new building. You got a new display coming out. That's what we're working on this year. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Plus all the-
The maintenance.
Because of the year-long project getting that building done, there's been some other stuff, maintenance kind of stuff that's sort of taken the back burner for a while, but we're gonna be playing catch up for a little while, but we've been we're about to tax our volunteers to the point where we've got to give them a little bit of a break. He told me the other day I could have the day off, so I appreciate it.
And you are one of the groups where you utilize community efforts and volunteer hours and on the newsletter, I mean, I'm amazed some of the things I read and then I think the skill set some of these people are bringing that's, they're just putting a lot of time down there to
Well, we're very, very blessed.
get everything going.
Somebody's watching after us, so.
I think what I hear from this commission is keep it up. I don't, unless these guys have a difference of opinion, I don't see an issue with your guys' budget this year.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks all.
Actually impressed. Expenses are up and.
Yeah.
Impressed. Okay. So you guys want to talk about each other?
Yeah, I thought it'd be a good introduction.
We keep
to
notes.
the Budget. The one thing, you've got your budget books in front of you now. I just thought of that. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess before Austin started, I could have probably explained that, I'm going to start putting all of those handouts as they send it to me. I'll start just updating your books so that you've got that all in one place whenever you walk in here. So we'll have all that presentation data right here in the book for you. We'll be ready to go.
Perfect.
Since really one of the first budgets is the county commission, we thought we'd kind of touch on that today, but before we get there, I was going to say we can kind of walk through this binder a little bit.
Yeah.
We have some time to just kind of show you, basically, we start out, we've got the budget schedule, and I'll continue to update that as we go. I will say we filled in a little bit more. Next week, we're planning to have the 8th Judicial District Court will come in and talk to us first thing in the morning around 9:30. After that, just because Public Works is such a large part of the budget, pretty much plugged in that Martin will kind of go through the highway, environmental services, noxious weed, all of that for the rest of that study session. And we'll kind of see what that leaves us at the end of the day. If we have some time, we can touch on some other items as well. But then after that, Central Kansas Free Fair did reach out. So now the only entity that I have not heard back from is the Tri-County Fair. So outside of that, we have those planned for May 29th, which will have Juvenile Detention Center, Central Kansas Free Fair, OCCK, and then obviously in June 5th, a lot of those dates, we're going to start having departments coming in, and we're going to try to fill as much of that time as we can. And then in those upcoming weeks that are not currently on this schedule, we'll just start filling the times with any additional departments or blanks that we have not covered yet. We also want to be able to take some time to set aside to be able to talk about personnel. Okay, we know that's always an important matter as well. So we're going to be covering a lot of that over the next few weeks. So if you flip that page, you'll get into where I've got clerk info. Got that just because it's got the county clerk's budget checklist. This comes from the state every year. This gives us a good idea of what we have to have, when we're going to be receiving things, some of the statutes that require these action steps. Flip past that, and you'll get the checklist. And on past that, that's where we get to the next one where we talk about the budget timeline. And these are pretty important dates. If we are going to be looking to exceed the revenue neutral rate, that has to be notified to the county clerk by July 20th. So that's a pretty early deadline. So we should have plenty of information to make a good decision on that well prior to July 20th. Our goal is hopefully that we will not have to necessarily have the revenue neutral rate hearing. And that will be up to you guys as well. In the past, just for safety reasons, we've gone ahead and held a revenue neutral rate hearing. Last year was the first year that we didn't, and we just held ourselves firm that we're going to stay under the revenue neutral rate, and it went along pretty seamlessly.
Because the legislation changed though too last year.
Yeah,
Before you'd want to push over if you were close, because if the valuations changed, and your levy went up or down, you were safeguarded from that. But last year it changed to where you still get the same amount of tax dollars that you proposed at your budget, even if the values change.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about that so much being close, like that's what it was for last time.
yeah, they did kind of fix that step because that could have been a problem. And so it concerned a lot of counties and cities when the revenue neutral rate first came out. Depending on how the numbers look, I would recommend, if we think we're going to be under the revenue neutral rate, I'm okay with not having the hearing, because sometimes I think it's a little misleading. The revenue neutral rate hearing notice that goes out, even if you're not planning, it stirs people up. And if you're not planning to go over it, why make people think you're going to? And so if we can present a budget that's going to stay under, then I'd recommend not. But if we're going to be borderline, then obviously we should take the proper precautions and still have the hearing. So we'll have more information on that as the weeks go along and as the budget.
Will we get a better idea on that when the assessed value comes back from the state?
Yes.
Okay.
So shortly, mid-June.
Sorry, from the clerk, sorry.
Yeah, we're just waiting on Jennifer. She just,
Come on, Jennifer.
Take a break.
We can do this right now.
yeah, so we'll have a lot of information there mid-June.
Okay.
And that's what we're hoping to have, a lot of these expenditures in line by then. So that way we're pretty set on where we need to be, and we'll be ready to make those decisions. After that, really you can pretty well skip to the expenses. We'll be filling in a lot of the rest of this information as it comes. But right now, if you flip to the expenditure tab, to start it off, we just have the updated outside organizations. And this is just to show you that past history of what we've paid the organizations over the years, what they've currently requested. If you have any conversations and want to make a recommendation in that column, I can start to fill that in as well. And then we'll have the approved towards the end of the year as we lock those in. So if you flip past that sheet, the first page of our operational budgets that we have for you, that's the non-departmental. So this is really, a lot of that is the outside organizations. And so this is actually page 1 of that expenditure sheet if you're following along. What stand out very obviously here, I've not made any changes to the 2026 amounts yet. Those are carryover so far from what the outside organizations were paid last year, or for the 2025 budget this year. The major change there is that cash reserve. After some conversation, I just added that. So that's a brand new line item. That number, that's something that we can discuss throughout this whole process. And we'll bring some more information on what maybe a proper cash reserve should be. This will be our general fund reserve. In the past, that had been budgeted in the administration line, and it was mixed in under contract services. So it just sometimes felt a little confusing, misleading possibly, because it looked like administration had a very inflated budget and we always spent far less. I think this will clarify that a little bit by separating it out. It has its own line item and it's clear that it's cash reserve. So that'll be a new way of tracking that, just to really help kind of clean up that process. If you flip to page 2, this is that.
You know what, I'll say this because people are gonna be curious how much is in our cash reserve. So can we say this number?
Yeah, you can. So the cash reserve that I have currently plugged in
Yep.
is 1.2 million. And that's been pretty common practice for what we have put aside on that cash reserve in the general fund over the years.
And what are some of the uses? Why would we have a cash reserve?
The cash reserve you really put in place because whenever we're setting these budgets, you don't know what's going to necessarily come. So it's really more of a responsibility type of measure. So we're trying to put a safety measure in place. If there was any type of disaster where revenues didn't come in for a few months, we need to still be able to operate. There's going to be a lot of expenditures that are going to have to go out. And so we've got to make sure that we have a proper reserve set to make sure that in those cases, we're still covered.
So in other words, there's no bankruptcy for government.
No.
We can't go out of
There
business.
was a community,
We can't really go out of business. I
there
guess
was,
is
there
what I'm
was
trying
a community. It was a city, but close to this area, and their reserves got so depleted, they were depleted. And for example, their public parks, some of them, they just quit mowing. They just said, we can't spend the time on that. And then there was a question whether it was the legality of it, but they issued some of their employees their paychecks. And then another group, they said, you're going to have to wait 2 days on yours, when they were cutting it that close. And so, you know, it seems like a logical formula to handle it, but it's really not something it's not fair to the employees.
Well, and really I knew the answer. I guess I wanted you to say it, but I guess what I'm trying to establish is we're a cash-based business. If you read about it, understand what we are. We can't not have some cash reserve if the worst has to come. We got to have the sheriff operating. We got to have the EMS operating. We got to have the road and highway department operating. So I just want to explain that to people. I know some people have questioned this reserve.
Yeah.
That's what it's for. It's so that your government doesn't stop working.
So how much total reserve do we have?
Well, so that's the budgeted reserve. Now, where we end the year, that's going to depend on how far we come under expenditures, if we have a deficit budget and we sometimes will budget that way because say our reserves actually are building, and so this will actually help us. We plug in the 1.2 to make sure that's the number, but then any savings you have over that last year in personnel, if there's openings, that number will only go up unless you spend, say, 3 or 4 larger projects come out that year that were unbudgeted. That would come potentially out of your general fund reserve. So these projects, sometimes 1.2 million sounds like a lot until you work in this type of business and you have one large piece of equipment that is unbudgeted that you weren't planning on. It's $500,000, and all of a sudden half a year that budget reserve could be gone in one fell swoop, and you just kind of have to make that decision, and that would come before the commission, obviously, in any of those types of measures. But our overall cash reserve, like where we end the year in cash, right now, and it depends on the time of year too, we had over $21 million in cash at the end of April, but that's across all of our different departments. The other part to think about on that is our tax dollars. With the way those distributions come from the state, they come early in the year, so we're always cash heavy early in the year. And then as revenue slowly trickles down and our expenditures stay the same, we start to spend down that cash. So at the end of the year, you get a better look at what our cash reserves are going to be.
So what if we only budgeted 1 million for a reserve. I mean, I mean, have we really ever, and I realize the other example that came to mind, I thought you'd mentioned it, is a bridge goes out.
That's where my brain's at.
And that's, you know, something you get after pretty quick. And you can't get matching funds or.
I just put it on hold for 20 years like you guys did down at Woodbine.
Huh?
Just put it on hold for 20 years like you did at Woodbine. You don't have to worry about any money. Oh, that's what they did.
And that, in all reality, we joke, but that's the truth of the matter. I mean, if something like a bridge came up and we did not have the reserves to handle or the cash on hand, we really can't do anything with that bridge, especially like immediately. It would have to be planned out. It might take multiple years to come up with that. We could possibly go out to look at some sort of financing on that. We could go with the bonds, which our cash value also, it affects our bond rating. So when we do go and we're trying to take on some large projects and we have to bond those, the interest rate we get depends on our bond rating as a government entity as well. So all of those things, it's just like your own personal credit rating. So when you have cash on hand, that actually helps our bond rating, which does help with our interest rates as well.
And then to add to that, your cash on hand can also be used for matching funds like from the North Central Regional Planning Commission to build big projects that you don't have to have that much cash come up. So depleting your cash resource, it's kind of crazy if you have an organization that will help match your funds to build or do whatever those things are. So good cash management and working with other organizations is really important.
No problem. So with that, I think we could probably move into and just look at that commission budget real quick. I think it's going to be pretty easy. Basically, you'll really only have 3 operational lines. The other lines are just personnel related lines. So that's why you don't see those in here today, because we're just looking at operations.
Okay.
So with your dues, memberships, and subscriptions, that's basically covering our dues for KCCA each year. So that's going to stay relatively the same. You're going to see about $550 to $600 in that line item. Pretty easy to budget that. So I don't know if you had any questions or if you thought of any other organizations that you think that the commission should be a part of. Any of those things, we could add that to that list. But right now we have that set at $600 for the budget.
You have any thoughts? I don't. I guess I'm going through my first year, so I don't know if I'm going to have much suggestion quite yet in terms of what we should be a part of, the commission group. But
well, the next one, then, that the travel training registration, that line item, it really depends on, seems like the NACO conference is one that sometimes 1 or 2 commissioners may attend. And then whenever the commission attends that, that would come out of that training line item. The other larger item is typically the KAC conference. So any hotel expense, training, or conference registrations, those kind of things would come out of those. So those are really the 2 training conferences that we've typically been taking out of the commission travel training and registration. So I think I'm comfortable with the budget number of 10,000 personally. When I look at years that 1 or 2 members have traveled to NACO, it comes really close or slightly over that $10,000 by the time you think of all the training throughout the year and conferences that are attended. And so I feel like that's a pretty realistic number, but see what you guys think on that.
We did have 1 year, and so this goes back when Laverne Myers was here, and he and I, there was an invitation actually from the White House, and they were having a special meeting with some of the cabinet members, and so anyway, Dr. Benjamin. Yeah. But anyway, we did attend that. And they do have something back at DC in the spring sometimes that commissioners from other commission districts attend. But that's something that's kind of been the thought over the years that maybe you do something like that once every 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, not a Not necessarily every spring, but be something. I don't know if you'd have an interest in that, Kenny, or
Possibly.
it's good to have the option there. And sometimes it's just timeliness of schedule and what's going on.
My only thought is we could probably plan out who's going to go to what event and conference and maybe get that number a little bit lower. That's my only thought.
Yeah, and I
Could it
think,
be 7,000 and then we just say, hey, only one of us is going to each one here?
It's on you,
It's
actually.
Ron.
It's on
I can
several of you.
I just take the information you guys pass back and don't see that, then, you know, you hear me say often, it don't take 3 people to screw a light bulb in. So
My big deal is I don't mind 2 of us going, but it does open up a possible somebody trying to get us for saying we're talking policy up there. That was my only thought on that.
Yeah.
I don't like having.
Most commission, a lot of the commissions have all of their commissioners there though, and it's just a matter of it's the instructional piece, and then plus it's been put out there that you're going, but I don't know that that's ever been a problem throughout the state on something
Here, how
like
about
that.
this? Would you guys be open to cutting maybe 1,100 of this so we could stay in that 10%? And we go down to 9,000 instead of 10,
Yeah, we could. What did we spend last year?
6,000.
Okay.
So that's what I'm kind
I
of.
believe last year, it was a little lower. I believe you did travel to NACO, but it was, you
That was
traveled,
like 2 years ago.
was it 2 years ago? Okay, so last year,
Last year was in Philadelphia.
okay, I thought that was the one that was in Austin, but I'm getting my years
That's the year
confused.
before.
So that's probably why it was actually a lower number, because there was no attendance at NACO last year.
And the other thing, like Janelle has attended, so that's usually,
Assume that comes out of her, but
that'd be out of a different budget.
Yeah, the administration training,
I would suggest some 9,000
9,000.
for travel training, and whatever that other one is.
The other thing, Kenny, which really is possible, considering it's usually at Wichita or Kansas City, you know, a person could go to one day of the conference. I mean, other than usually the one-day registration is the same as all of the days. But
I'm not concerned with that, as long as we agree, but.
well, a lot of those conferences are going viral too, so you can watch them someone at home too. So.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's how I've been doing, because like the North Central Regional, I telecommute to that.
Yeah.
So, and that saves us some money, I think, because
Yeah.
I'm not returning those gas receipts. That is a drive.
Yeah. I'm also, yeah, on the office supplies line that you have there, which we have $500 budget. I'm not, a lot of that, we supply some items for in here, but typically we were probably purchasing a lot of the office supplies out of administration. I'm not sure that it's necessary to have that line item in your budget. You only have 3 line items, so I don't know if it's also that necessary to cut
If you
that.
don't think it's necessary, just get it out.
Because in reality, I
or cut it in half.
unless it was a very
Yeah.
specific request from a commissioner, like I need these copies of this material,
I had you print me a map. and you did
Yeah.
that.
those types of things, that would probably have come out of this office.
I
supply.
assumed it did.
But that was in-house, so.
But otherwise, if there's a pen or a piece
Yeah.
of paper, we might have walked out and, you know, we would just bring it from
Just-
the.
Why don't we cut it in half too?
Okay, yep, that sounds good.
We're down to 250. We go over, start payroll deducting us. Is that how that works?
I feel better because as I've been meeting with these department heads, I'm like, we're holding down, but now I'm gonna have to hold their feet to the fire. I gotta make sure that they hold down.
Well, I'm trying to do that a little bit. That's what I feel like. I'm trying to be fair here. We're asking everyone else. On the same team, right?
So after that, we can move into the clerk's
Okay.
budget, and I'll kind of let Jennifer maybe step in here and kind of run through. We've got some notes. You can see all the notes off to the side. Those notes are really what I can fit in from our discussions that we've had internally, because I kind of walked through that process we just did with you on those 3 budgets. That's what I've been doing with the department heads over the last month or so. So I'll let Jennifer kind of step in and kind of highlight some of this.
Mention real quick though, you know, in all the departments, there's a lot of times we'll have in our summaries that, you know, someone's gone this week, they're attending this convention or they're attending this training and so on, and some more than others. And some of them I think are requirements for certification, but you know, that might be something too that within departments, there may be some that they recognize that, you know, maybe they aren't necessary or it might be an area to cut back. I mean, the other thing you run into that too is if you're developing within the departments, you know, you can't really wait till they're the department head to get that training too. So, I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope, but I mean, I think it's just a matter of looking, you know, are there places that there happens to be room for it.
Sure.
And I mean, you know, having said that, I'm sure there's some that it's just, they've already taken that into consideration over the last few years or decade. I mean, this is a new idea, so.
Sure. Why don't you walk it through it? Walk
Sure.
us through it, sorry.
Sure. Jennifer Gaten, County Clerk, Election Officer. Equipment maintenance, that's to maintain my printer in my office. It's staying the same at 2. Dues and memberships, spent more than 24, but as I looked at it, we had a Quadient, which is our postage machine in our office, that invoice went to the wrong line item. So it went over, but it shouldn't have came out of there. So I'm going to keep that the same at 900. Advertising, we don't have any control over that. We have to publish things. It's statutorily required for budgets, elections and everything. It's at 1,500. We spent 17 last year. I'm just gonna leave it at 15. I don't know, because we had 4 elections last year, if that'll toggle any. We will be required to have, won't be required, but we have 3 statutory elections now, March, August, and November. March, it's the one that starts next year. If anybody wants a special election, they can hold it that time, instead of any time of the year. Okay, travel training, I had 3,500 for this year. I want to bump it up to 4,500 because I have all new people on me myself. None of them know what to do. They need to go to all these trainings. Telephone, internet, I don't really have control over that. I brought it down to 200 from 300 because we were under 200 last year, total expenses. Office supplies, we spent around 3,500. I kept it at 3,600 just to make sure we have enough. Parts and supplies, we spent 953 last year. The budget is at 1,100. I'm going to keep it at 1,100 for 2026. Miscellaneous expense, we took out Jadaburg Accounting Contract Services and made a whole new line for her. She reviews our levies, so we have a second set of eyes on it when we're about to put out your tax statements at the end of the year.
What else do you have in miscellaneous?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. It's not very much, not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what it is.
We got miscellaneous purchases, but we didn't purchase it. I don't have a budget for that this year.
Okay.
I will say in miscellaneous, that is one that we've been identifying across a lot of the departments as a whole.
Is it office supplies? Like what, what is it exactly?
Yeah, well, and there are, I will, because we're trying to eliminate that and move those to lines that are more appropriate, just to make sure it fits in better. So we've actually, that was one that we've been addressing across a lot of departments. It does seem like no matter what in this type of business, for some reason, there's something that comes across for like, where does that?
I do have some examples for
under-
that. Like when we had Jeannie's retirement,
Okay.
we purchased everything out of miscellaneous.
I wonder if we could categorize what could be in miscellaneous expense at the very minimum.
Yeah.
So then we can report that, like, we had a retirement party, we had,
Yeah, it would be in your like,
I think people understand, you
yeah.
gotta treat employees to a retirement party and stuff, so.
So that is some of the stuff that did come out. I remember looking at that.
Okay.
And then we got rid of all the IT because it goes through my tech fund and through them. We don't need that.
Okay.
Then elections. I don't really have control over election stuff because, and again,
Here real quick, I'll help. The elections does skip to page Commission, page 14 of your expenses there.
Sorry, I'm kind of, maybe I need something.
We do that.
Okay, so prior year for advertising, we spent 3,300. The budget is at 5. We just kind of like to keep a healthy amount in there because like I said, we have to advertise. We don't have control. Election workers, we had at 36, actual expense for 24. The current for 25 is at 20 because we may have a primary, may not. City school elections, primaries are only held if you have enough candidates to have a primary. So that's why it's lower. 2026 amount. We may need to go up on that with the 2. We kept it the same as this year.
Why do you need to go?
Well,
We have large elections next year. Unless we can, maybe we talk about that if we get poll books that we will be cutting back on. poll
We're gonna have governor, right?
since it-
Insurance commissioner announced,
We have 2
Ben Hawkins.
Figure that.
constitutional amendments coming out next year. They're expecting 750,000 people are gonna vote in August.
Yeah,
You probably need to address that.
let's look back a little closer at the historical years, if we can find a couple years that were comparable.
I
to
would
that one.
compare it to 22.
And then we can add some inflationary numbers for that as well, based on that. And so you said 22.
I'm saying, I'm comparing the amount of people coming through in 22 that we had the election.
So why don't you retouch that? And then Marcus, why don't you put that back on?
And you know what's always tough is they've got to, the Secretary of State typically will give a recommendation, I guess, on how many ballots and what level people will participate. And, you know, there's been a few elections where there were more ballots, blank ballots thrown away, unused in all counties. Our
Yeah.
county usually does better than a lot of counties.
We don't go by the Secretary of State
So
estimating how many ballots to order. We go by previous years with the same kind of election happening and what was the turnout, and then we kind of adjust from there.
But people vote at a higher rate is what I observed
Actually
in
ran out of
Dickinson
ballots.
County
22.
compared to,
Primary.
they're expensive to print, but you gotta have them.
So
You have to have access.
in 22, and I think we did kind of review that, and we still came in at that 20 number. In 22, we spent 17,637. There was 9,000 on the primary that year. And then in November, did spend another 85 to about another 9. So it was right around 9,000 on. So
We can leave it, but
if you think it's going to be questionable, we could probably add a couple of thousand on it. It's one we're not going to have any control over. So it's unfortunately one of those budgets that when it does come in, if it goes over, then you're going to go over budget. So we want to make sure we budget appropriately. So I think that 20 could be close, but maybe that's too tight. Maybe we do.
the reason why I think we left it the same is because I am thinking about maybe purchasing some poll books. If I can get electronic poll books, like right now I have 20 people that are poll workers in Abilene. I'm hoping to cut that down to 8 or 10 with electronic poll books. So that's where I was thinking I could save money there. You know, the initial purchase of a poll book, yes, but then I could cut on poll workers and increase my accuracy. That's what I'm looking for. So I think that's why we left it.
Yeah.
That, without having the note there, and it's been a little while since we talked about it, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, you'll find I only have so much room for notes on these unless we want to have a whole book of notes.
So I would just leave it there for now. Because if we can make that better, you know, where we can cut down our poll workers, I'm thinking across the board, cut down poll workers because of these polls. Because right now you have 4 people on a table. I don't know if you've ever really paid attention to it. You have your first person checking in with the ID, having signed. Second person writes in the second book just so they can keep those 2 books balanced. Third person asks if they want paper machine. The 4th person has to be there because someone has to walk them to the machine. That changed last year. Secretary of State said someone needs to be designated to walk them to the machines and pick their precinct and their party, and so nothing gets undone the wrong way. So I'm hoping if I get poll books, we can bring it down to 2 people at the smaller locations instead of 4. And then You know, instead of 20, maybe 8 or 10 in Abilene, instead of 8 in Chapman, maybe 4.
Why don't we shoot for the 20? And
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's just leave it. I think we'll be okay.
I think it's ambitious, like you say, but let's try it.
Moving on. Contract services. We have to pay for like Elvis every year, which is our online voter registration logs. That's what's coming out of that. There's a prediction that there's not a prediction. It's coming down the line where Elvis is going to get replaced either by a newer version. Yeah, I know. Or a whole nother company. So we're planning ahead and putting money aside for that. That's what that's about. They said the amount's going to be extreme, but when they purchased it last time, they had HAVA funds to purchase that, so it wasn't as much on the counties to pour into it to make it happen. So without knowing how much money that's going to cost, I think we just bumped it up so that we could address for that extra cost coming out for that.
And you see even how much we've already spent in 2025, a lot of these services we don't have a lot of control over. And like there's been some changes with all the process in the elections here the last couple of years and a lot more technology updates. And so as those come, because we're looking at some of the, what's the machine?
Our express, another thing that's coming down the pipeline is next year, all machines need to be 2.0. We have 1.0. They can't be upgraded to 2.0. So they'll have to be replaced.
There's getting to be a little more eyeballs, seems to be a lot more restrictions on the election process. So we have to budget appropriately.
Nothing we can do.
There's going to be a lot of things we don't have control over in this budget specifically.
So we have, I believe, 16 express votes that would need to be upgraded. I mean, those 200s that we have would all need to be 300s. We have 3 of those.
And you said you don't have an idea of what that's going to cost us.
No, I'm going to get quotes on the poll books and then reach out and get quotes on the other stuff too, to replace them.
Okay.
All right. Office supplies, it's stuff that we just need to make elections go smooth. I don't know a detailed description, but last year we bought a lot of tabletop ballot privacy shields. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. You sit inside of them and they got 3 walls around you. We got that for all the polling locations, so that's why it's a little higher last year than previous. So we just brought it back down to 3 because we're not going to need to repurchase those again. Those are good for a while. Meals is we work through election night. You know, we don't leave. It's just how it's always been done. And it saves us from taking the time for everybody to leave when we're trying to get stuff pushed out. We cut off at noon the day before elections, so we eat lunch in the office as we work through it.
I agree. If you're going to keep people over dinner, you need to feed them.
Okay, and then election ballot materials, we have 40 for this year because it's city school, it shouldn't be a whole lot. We left it back up at 50 just to be safe in case we have 3 elections. And we're going to have higher turnout with 2 and then.
So my only question is like on the new machines, is that any possibility for like a grant to do stuff like that?
I haven't seen anything quite yet. I think the state may offer some funding on some of those items, but I don't think even on these current.
Not on
I just
machines.
understand that the state
Security
is who is saying you got to use these, right?
Yes,
Or
it's
is
the
it for the
new,
federal election? Where's it? Who sets that regulation?
the state.
The state does.
Federal too, I think, is where the 2.0 comes from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Starting to there's some of these, because she was just at a conference where she read off a whole laundry list of concerns. It would be a lot of money.
There's
that
a
we
lot
have
of
to
changes
prepare
coming
for
down the line.
if it all happens. Once again, I'm one though, until they get set to statute or they actually pass law, I'm not going to get overly concerned with it, but we're going to have to think ahead and plan that there's going to be some changes in technology, I think, for elections over the next upcoming years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Exactly.
They got HAVA funds for the very original ones. When the same time they did the Elvis, these last ones were on us, and then these next ones will be on us. They did have a grant type purchase or program to the state last year for security things, which we got like roll along ballot bags for that. But it's so limited on what you can get. They're not gonna actually do machines though.
So
We're gonna have to have Leah come back.
I was gonna say, and I think we're actually wrapping up with Jennifer here pretty quick. We have a lot of questions that
Yeah.
we'd like to continue with. We can.
I don't, seems like there's a lot of uncertainty in your budget, which I don't think it's your fault, but,
Yeah,
so,
election, there's no, it's just like a guessing game because we've got to prepare for the best scenario to make it happen because we have to do it.
okay. I don't know. We went through a lot of it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward with your office and you gotta hold elections. You gotta have a clerk's office. It's not a choice.
So we could probably move on to Leah if you wanted to, let
You wanna
her.
try?
We'll try to make it fast,
Okay.
okay? Leah Hearn, County Treasurer. So on my budget, I had worked with Marcus of kind of relocating some of the things that like on dues and membership, there's our association dues and then for the state. And then I also am with the federal organization, which I have done some online classes on that so that you can just do it as a webinar. Makes it really nice when you don't have to travel. And then on the advertising, my biggest expense there is when I have to print the delinquent real estate 3 times in the newspaper. That is the most expensive thing. Plus, there's other things we publish during the year.
Okay.
Those things. Every year, the Treasurers Association tries to get that so we don't have to print it 3 times. Haven't made any progress on that one. So maybe sometime. On the contract services, we kind of took some of the money from my capital outlay fund and moved it up there because I'm thinking that when I need to replace printers or copiers, that I might go look into the lease agreements because all that is just getting so expensive. And a number of counties, Geary County, Riley County leases them. And then that way, when something happens, I'm not needing to pay for those repairs, which that's what I'm doing now. Sometimes it seems like we're having them up here a lot.
We do the same at Abilene Machines. So
Yeah.
I know they're different printers probably, but
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense to do it.
Mhm.
He does the lease program.
We lease most of them. I think there's a few we own, but yeah, for the most part, the major ones, the big, Xerox, huge ones, those are all.
So I think that might be a better way than.
I can change the ink and everything. I mean, they do the whole thing.
Starting to cycle through that in a lot of departments. And I think we kind of discussed that would be an appropriate use here too, because we've been purchasing those machines outright in the past. And then as they get beyond their years of service, the maintenance contract goes up. And so you're actually spending more on maintenance over the year with an older machine than you would be with the lease program is what we're finding out.
Training and travel, that kind of stays about the same. We have 3 state conferences a year. So this year I'm lucky because Manhattan is the next one, so I won't have to stay out. And telephone, internet, that's just about the same every year. I don't have any control on that. Office supplies, we moved the parts and supplies, that amount into office supplies and eliminating that parts and supplies because almost everything pretty well falls under that office supplies. Miscellaneous expense and the miscellaneous personal expense, that's just in case that's needed. I probably in the miscellaneous expense have taken out if I've had to repair machines and I didn't have it in one of my other line items. So.
You think I know it's a small amount, but if you're gonna lease them, do you need that stuff? I mean, maybe a little bit, but.
Yeah.
As much. I mean, it's
Because I
not a
won't-
very big
If I
amount.
go out to lease, I won't be able to do all the printers. I want to keep what I have and just as one totally clumps out, then I can do a lease on that and then just move into that. So it's kind of hard to
That
know.
makes sense. No, I got you.
So, and the software and hardware, that's just like I pay for our online program for scheduling a driver's license. And I'm working with Dustin to get something a little cheaper. So that gets paid out of there. My tax statements, we've always just budgeted 5,000 out of the treasurer's budget. Of course, every year they're higher and higher. The remaining cost comes out of county general. And the capital outlay is the fund that I took that money and took part of it and relocated it, but we're doing away with that line item.
Okay.
Also. And a lot of the supplies come out of my treasurer's budget. So I'm going to try to work on the things that are motor vehicle. I'm going to put those in so that we can establish a budget for motor vehicle. And we all know that the county puts the bill for all of that the state should be paying for. But every county has to do that. So we'll keep working at it, trying to get something to come back from the state to the counties to help fund that a little bit.
I'd like to know what that number is at the end of the year. In a year.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what that number is.
So
Well, I am
I will
for me.
work on that and we'll see. Yeah.
You would.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, you came in with a lower budget,
Yeah.
so
We worked hard
thank you.
and
Appreciate that.
yes,
Um,
hopefully that.
to me, this is kind of like the clerk. I mean, you guys it's an operational department.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
are you doing something you're not supposed to be doing? But even with that being said, looks like you've done good work, so thank you. Ron, do you have any questions for him?
I do. At the end of Marcus, at the end of each year, when there's excess money in these budgets, where does that get placed?
So it depends on which department it is. A lot of those departments are in the general fund. So it does not stay within the specific department. We're all kind of a part of the general fund team in a way, but so that all the budgets you heard today are general fund budgets. And so any of that remaining fund is going to be just carryover funding that's going to help you in your budget process for the year to follow. So that is just going to give you a better budget carryover, so that's less property tax or any other revenue that would be required to cover expenditures for the future. So it really just helps you in the next year's budget.
What concerns me is right now we're at a 2.3 inflationary rate per month. So if you round it off, there's 2%, that's 24%. And now you're cutting your budgets. We're cutting these budgets so that can get down 10% or something. I'm a little concerned at the end of the year, it's going to be bad.
And I think that's going to be part of making sure that we do consider and review that cash reserve, that everyone's comfortable with what that difference would be. If we squeeze the budgets a little tighter, we're really looking at, there may have been some areas before that had just a little bit more of a safety to make sure we were covered for something. And we're taking those, if we don't have a specific plan for those dollars right away, then those are dollars that are going to be, if an emergency comes up and an expenditure is needed, that may have to be more of a cash reserve type of discussion as opposed to having room for that in your own operational budget. So that may be an overall general fund discussion instead of just, if Leah has an emergency, a copier just breaks down in the middle and you
I think where that really plays in, Ron, is when you get into the non-elected departments. You know, with these elected officials, it's one thing. There's a check to it. You have the community. It's kind of say something if you're out not being responsible with your money. So my thought is the check and balance, like you're getting in, it goes back into our carryover. And then that comes back to the commission, which is another check and balance with the public. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to add on to what you're saying.
That's good.
The bottom line is general fund can cover anything. If you ever needed money, you just pull that general fund and put it in any account you needed.
For that cash reserve, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, in reality, any line item that is within the general fund, if it were to go over budget, it would be covered by general fund reserves. I actually encourage a lot of department heads, and it's sometimes a difficult discussion, and even with the public, I have to explain why. But I would prefer to see us go over budget in a specific department than to move that to, say, a line item in the cash reserve or something like that, where we have the funds budgeted. Because if we go over budget, that prepares us for the next year, so we know these are the true expenditures coming out of office supplies. But if you have 5,000 budgeted, you're about to spend 7,500, so you move 2,500 somewhere else. You don't really know what that true number of office supplies is. So I would recommend that we go over budget on a couple line items so that we really have a good understanding. And then we maybe move funds from the line that we don't need, and we consolidate those, we're doing a lot of that in this budget also, is consolidating some different line items, just make sure that they make sense. So you may see one line item go up, like this one says 400%. It sounds scary. It is $4,000, but Leah was able to lower another line item by $9,000. We're able to move that $5,000 appropriately into contract services so that now we can cover that cost in the line item where it really makes a little more sense.
See where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. But you make a good point, Ron. I don't think we cut and then we go spend the money. I think we cut and we reassess our cash reserve and say, how much do we need to make sure we're covering everything? And then once we get comfortable with that amount, what I'd love to see after that would be a corresponding tax cut if we can afford it. I think we can. So, but first we need to get the budget right, see what the carryover comes in at, see where we actually budget by the end of 25, and then we'll get into 26 and we'll know.
Right.
It's all being proposed, so it's kind of hard till you actually get to that year and actually see
Yeah.
the stuff that comes in, so.
Yep,
Get it.
Okay, am I finished?
I think you are. Thanks for.
Thank you.
We're a little bit late. Oh, no, we're not.
I think till 11.
Yeah. I think 10:30. That's why I was like, we're going overtime. Leah, come back now. I'm joking.
We can dive in a little deeper now. So,
Doug, do you have anything you want to talk about? We've got a few minutes.
One of them, I've been receiving some correspondences in regards to the county clerk election. And I don't know what all of this is in here. Have you had correspondence with them?
No, I haven't. They told us to have our county counselor do it.
Okay, I've received that. And,
Yeah, they had me give you that.
okay. So I'm going to need some information to be able to respond to them.
Yeah, I figured we could talk. I just didn't know what your schedule was like.
Oh, we'll make time to.
Yeah, we got to.
Yeah, we'll have to make some time. This is about the League of Women Voters of Kansas. And the correspondence that I received was,
We, during meeting, go into executive session to discuss that.
yeah, we'll go in.
Why don't can we get that
yeah, we can.
for today?
Yeah.
I know we don't have a whole lot on the agenda anyway, so let's talk about that.
10 minutes right here.
10, how long do you want, Doug?
Oh,
15, 10 minutes?
yeah, no, 10 would be plenty, I think. Because we're just getting started with this.
Why don't we go ahead and plan on that today and
Okay.
get it discussed?
Okay,
Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Doug.
that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, we got some time. We're going to take a quick recess of 22 minutes, and then we'll resume at 11 unless anybody has something you want to talk about in the meantime. I don't think we do.
That's good.
We'll start back at 11. Okay. Yes.
So anyway,
I've had multiple calls.
okay, well, we might have to
Jennifer,
I've explained to her,
try to,
you want to get that?
I don't know what to do on that. The automatic license plate readers.
just from a constitutional standpoint, is it, and I guess whoever they've talked to the sheriff and he said, you know, unless they strike it down in Supreme Court,
That's how I,
investigative and they feel like it's more of an intrusion. And I think he gave the example of you go to someone's house and they've got doorbell on it. They didn't ask permission to take your picture. You're on their porch and
here's where I'm at. I'll just say it right now, and I know everyone can hear it, but they found that little girl. I have a little girl,
oh, yeah.
and until Supreme Court or a court tells us we can't do it, I'm very in favor.
Is someone concerned about the flat cameras and the constitutionality and they were going to come here possibly to visit with us, except we've got security at the door, which is also something they're against. But the thing is, it can be a threat. It doesn't have to be against us, which it hasn't been, but if it's for anyone in the building or the courts or the judges, and I mean, there's reasons for security and it's a fact of life. I mean, I can't board an airplane without going through security. And
I watched a very disturbing podcast last night with Tim Tebow and Sean Ryan, and it got into child trafficking. And if these cameras catch even one kid in my lifetime from being out of that, it's well worth it. I will sacrifice a little bit of my
and I tried to explain.
freedom.
I did try to explain also that on interstate and so on, sometimes they catch people that either a stolen vehicle where nobody's involved or they're hauling drugs. But if that fentanyl or drugs gets to someone, that also is going to impact our communities.
Exactly.
And so you've got to have some of that stuff. I mean,
I get the concern, but I know you guys have probably looked into this too, but it's SJIS information. Go look at the regulations on how to get into SJIS. It is not open for the public. It is not something that can be abused. I mean, the KBI oversees that, or I'm sorry, the KHP oversees that. I believe the KBI is involved too. And we're talking about heavily regulated information. And matter of fact, we're going to talk about it in our radio policy on encryption, which touches that information that we're talking about. So I can assure people that the information is not being abused. But with that being said, the state of Kansas does not have any regulation against these license plate readers. There's nothing saying we cannot administer.
And I think that's what the sheriff's department was saying is it hasn't gone through the courts to say they are illegal. And
exactly.
And security, that's just.
I know I'm being sentimental about it, but I hear about someone getting found that could have been in a life of terrible, terrible life where they were going to end up going. Just everything else kind of goes the way. I mean, for me, that's worth it to me, I guess. But
I appreciate being looked after and watched to make sure everything's safe. I have nothing to hide. They can do whatever.
Well, and actually, and this stuff has been around for a long time.
it is.
I mean,
The state
now is talked about more, but there's been examples where
something I mentioned there
the turnpike
to our constituent is, the sheriff's deputy vehicles have had these on them for a number of years. And now we've just installed permanent cameras, in the entrance and exits of cities, but we've been reading your license plate. The state has anyway for a long time. KHP's been doing this for a while. I think some people think they're reading your tag and typing it into a computer, and but that's not quite how it works.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea it was that odd of an item.
I had one more thing. I believe the sheriff did this in his budget, not mistaken. The automatic license plate readers. So he has the right to do that. He's an elected sheriff. He thought there was a piece of equipment they could utilize, and So as far as if I'm concerned, there's not much the commission. I just don't know if we have the right to say that he can't do that.
Well, it's good to get feedback and I did tell them, I said, I'll visit with you more.
Yeah.
And there may be some things we agree on. There's probably things we're going to disagree on, but that's all we can do is talk right now.
Sure. So
But I don't want to override the concern. I understand trying to make sure your constitutional rights are not being infringed. I get that too. But I believe we have a way to determine that. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not a judge. I don't think I have the jurisdiction to say. But as far as the law right now, they are allowed.
Well,
Is she, is the constituent going to come in today, you said?
no, she wanted to start attending our meetings, possibly want to know where they were at.
Okay.
At first, she was upset with this. She was talking about some of the things the city had done. And then finally got it determined what city. And so anyway, but
I'm a little surprised she's reaching out to you. I tried to, I think she's in my district.
I told her she was. I said, yeah. But I said, we all represent the county.
That's
So
true.
That's just what we want to talk to. So
I just get the dogs and cats things.
That's what they're concerning.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously, you guys, seriously. I can handle that though. It's pretty neat. They're hard to catch sometimes, but that's, a bad deal.
It is interesting, just by district, how you all get a little bit different concerns from, the people in your area. So
Yeah, she's been, I give her my opinion a long time, so I'm surprised she's reaching
well, and
out.
that's the thing is that, all of us aren't. The three of us get along, but we maybe aren't going to. Like down the line.
Yeah.
So, you
The old saying is, we can disagree policy wise.
Other than NFL, I agree with Marcus on that.
What's that?
Other than NFL.
Yeah, man, yeah.
just wait, 2026, that might be the year you become a Raiders fan.
Hey, I got an invite to go to San Paulo.
What?
Go to San Paulo. Brazil.
Really?
Yeah, we're playing down there.
Yeah,
It's a pretty good
I
deal.
guess the Chargers.
that would be a fun one. Yeah.
Oh,
100 days till kickoff for K-State football.
Wow. So Avery Johnson's Corvette was for sale, available back at Long McCarthy there for a little bit.
Just had it for a year is all. It was at the Solomon Prom.
Was it?
Yeah.
Really?
Some kid had a dad that works at Long Mac, and so they let him use it. And I think Long Mac drove it to the Solomon Park, City Park downtown. And so then the kid got to drive it like 3 blocks or whatever to the high school and go through the line. And then after that, that's the last they got to touch it, I think.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But it's a sharp looking car.
All that. Yeah. I think that's a little nicer than anything I picked from.
Well, he got it for free.
That's not bad.
I think.
Yeah.
Full executive session here. Do that in other, right?
I'm not sure. Janelle's online. I don't know if you want to have her call in for that or if you just want to discuss that. You can just,
She's with her husband there, right?
yeah, she's online. I'm not sure if she's available. She may just
It's up to you.
have it up on her, but I hate to bother her just in case. I think we can cover the information as long as we know that
And then you could probably give her
that
a.
I could give, but since it's held in an executive session, I should make sure that
Yes.
share that information.
I was gonna have you, Doug, and us.
Oh, Doug, doing good. How are you doing? Good.
I believe on this one, we would do attorney-client privilege.
So it's in regards to election.
So Janelle is available.
She wants to join, she's more than welcome.
Jennifer, I think it's Jennifer, two would be,
No.
because this actually,
Oh, yes, it would.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right, sorry.
So, and then if you want to include Janelle, I could call her on the phone. Is that what?
If she wants to, if she's available and wants to, she's more than willing.
Yep, sounds like it.
I'm okay with that. Election. The elections of last year, correct? I don't know how to title it. Do I just say, I can just say election.
Yeah.
Okay.
State election. If you want. This is in regards to the election from last presidential election. Yeah. that's it. Take a look at it.
If that's enough, I'll just say that.
Yeah, two
That's fine. We'll do that.
the signature. Not too accurate. How old it is, but to them, this thing, if you look at this up here, this comes from the petition, but it's funded through
Do a carryover.
receipt.
And that, my proposal would be to carry over for a year and
Money they're dumping at this,
then do a
hiring law.
actual tax cut.
No, I wonder if we can cut that to 1 million for the reserve, 1.2.
It could work.
What would happen? What would happen is if we
Guarantee this is out of Los Angeles,
exceed that,
Washington DC.
which I don't think, that probably hasn't happened in the last 15 years. It still would come out of the other reserve. And of course, when it comes out of the general reserve, then that's not a path you can continue.
No.
So, I mean, you could for a while, but there's a point that you can't. And so it's not good. One thing we do run into, are we on audio? Because we should be.
Yeah, it is.
I'll make sure we
They're
won't.
just still live.
One thing is like when we had storms and stuff like that, and so we're trying to get all the information for FEMA, just like the snowstorm. And then we have to expend all that extra money and all that overtime and everything in hopes that we're going to get it back. And then sometimes we don't get anything back. And so, that's money that never was in the budget that you just, got stuck with, or all of us did. But
Well, I think we all got to be very financially respectful to the taxpayers' dollar.
Yeah.
No matter what department we are, whether it's us or whatever, that we do the right thing, that we're not wasting money. And I think that's what you're bringing up is this does not have no waste of.
And then I want to go about it in a responsible way of how, I want to cut taxes, but we can't just overnight. We need to do this intelligently. So I don't know that method. We cut 10%, let's say this year, and then maybe cut 5, let that carry over and then cut another 5, just so we make sure we're not in a financial disadvantage. But that's stuff I want to discuss with you guys as we keep going, see where the budget actually comes in at.
And I think too, where a lot of taxpayers come from is, I just got through saying we can't get into our reserves and then do that. It's not sustainable. And, some of them are getting into their reserves with a little money that they have set aside just because
So I got,
everything's gone up. Taxes go up, prices go up, insurance goes up.
I think it looks funny sometimes on a financial statement when you have different departments with money and they have excess that they didn't use. It looks like, what the heck's going on here, I mean,
exactly. And we haven't even gotten any personnel yet,
No.
so I think that's
Perception,
where
yeah.
you're gonna see personnel. So
Mhm.
there's a couple departments I already know that don't full staff, but we still budget for it. So stuff I'd love to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's
Gonna get deep, I think, once we get into that. side.
it's tough because it's not like they're trying to pick on anyone.
No,
But
that's not what we're doing.
once this department, we know who we're talking about too. So.
True. No, I just see it as well, things were good for a long time and
I'm a very conservative person. I don't believe in wasting any money, but I got to be very careful. But my thought is, you got. I mean, I can pinch a penny. I guarantee you that.
yeah, well, that's where I'm at.
But
And
you get too senile about it.
exactly.
It'd be
Well, you know,
counterproductive.
A disaster was the tax cut that, let's just say it affected. It was not like you had implemented tax cut.
Mhm.
And that's what I don't want.
Yeah.
For the county. And I know we're not going to be like that, but I just want to make sure that we're going to get you a tax cut. We're going to do it responsibly. And that way nothing can be, everything can operate the way it needs to operate, but we're still going to save some money.
And even with the way these processes work, it helps that we've been having this discussion for months leading into the budget conversation so that we could kind of prepare, start working through those numbers. Because if that number comes out, say, in July and we say, hey, we're cutting 10%, then it gets really challenging. But when we start it early enough and we start with that as the goal in our head as we're trying to work through, as staff, I think it helps also with the departments just kind of going in with that initial conversation, I think was really helpful, even as I've been walking.
I do too. And I'll say it for the record, the staff is working with us, I think. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
This could have been a lot more hostile than it has been. So I appreciate that.
In the conversation so far, they've all been very open and they want to be able to find it in the budget. I think they see that as a sense of pride and just to show
I
that
do too.
they're still doing their due diligence too. So it's been a good process so far.
That's not to say that we're not, we were talking about bridges and roads. If you look at his plan, it's a 5-year plan, really. By the time we get to that road, we have budgeted 5 years, most of the time, maybe 3, maybe 2, to pay for that. So there's a reason we have cash in certain accounts.
And they kind of plus sometimes it does fine, but especially with those larger projects and mobilization, all of those things, you just kind of have to plan that years in advance. You get that set. Something like this.
No,
sometimes $2 million comes out fast, but you have to plan multiple years and make sure you're able to handle something like that. So what will happen?
We just gotta explain that. And I think the work session going online is gonna help. They're gonna understand why we got so much money in that account. And, you're gonna see a drastic reduction in that account this year because the plan is coming together.
Yes,
I agree. I think that would be really helpful because there's, now you can go online to the budget process. I think you got 4 more years in that. That's
You're getting some good tape, maybe.
Oh, I have to add that.
Okay, yeah.
Even these numbers, they're not new.
Well, and
Well,
mine,
that's
my 25, and I literally thought about it. I'm like, I made him go get a new binder.
I recycled out of like the 23 or 24 budgets to use for these.
I'll give you a 25.
We're always recycling, but
I need to bring it back. It's just sitting in my office.
Signature does not match.
That they want.
Only got a minute.
So
The other ones are.
do you think if we give them that page, this is the only one that matters, what do you think?
Sometimes when I get these notes, instead of trying to save the note, I take a picture of it.
Any problems, if they have,
Let's start with this.
want to
You
get.
have a deal out there in app now. Do that. Right.
It's the only two that we got to deal with. Hold
I
on.
just don't want more problems.
I don't either. I don't want
That's
them
all I'm
going
saying.
back, harassing people and doing all that.
Okay.
So that's, we'll do that one.
Call this meeting to order. If we'd all rise for the flag salute. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We go to the approval agenda. It's pretty easy today. Only thing I have today is one notice and a motion to move into executive session to discuss an election matter. Other than that, that is all I have on the agenda today.
Move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion. All those,
And what was the executive session for?
the executive session is going to be to discuss an election,
Is,
the election matter. We got,
but
we need a
is
separate.
it non-elected
sorry, yes, it is going to be attorney-client privilege. exception.
attorney-client privilege? Okay, that's what I wanted to pin down is
Yes,
attorney-client privilege. Okay,
To discuss what?
to discuss. an
that's all we
election matter.
need. We just need attorney.
Election matter.
Yeah, election.
Oh,
The subject is election
Okay.
matter. So I'll second that motion. All those, any more discussion, guys? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to consent agenda. The minutes are provided in your packet, commissioners, on May 8th meeting. Expenditures are $283,259.12. Hand checks are $9,586.57. SD security of $4,588.50. Utilities payment of $10,109.88. Special check cut for $399 and abated tax of $573.80.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Commissioner comments and committee reports. I will start. I got some may or may not know, but the Dickinson County EDC has got a formal resignation letter from its director, Jessica Goodale. We are now in the process of holding probably many late night board meetings to discuss a reorganization of that. Of that organization. I said organization twice. So we're going to do a reorganization and start attacking to go find a new director, go back to the investors, explain what's going on. All of this is going to happen within the next month or so. The June 5th, I think, is probably a little early for us to be able to come and give you a budget. But I anticipate hopefully by mid-June, we are back on track and back in motion, back in business. So, but we are currently working on that. We have talked to a few people to serve as interim. I'm hoping that will happen so that we can at least get somebody in here and to do the operations in the interim. So just for the public to know, that is what's going on with the EDC. The board, since it's, we're looking at this as a good opportunity to reorganize this thing, get with everybody in the community, discuss what exactly the EDC needs to be doing, what organizations do different functionalities in the community. I'm thinking a community foundation, a few other people, and how we all need to be interacting with each other. And I think this is a great opportunity to reorganize and get us back going down the right path. So.
And kind of for clarification too, it's not a per se county board, so
No.
it's not something that is administered through the county. Janelle doesn't do that, or Marcus. And you, Kenny, are on the board of directors, and the county does contribute an annual amount to them, but it's also people that have invested throughout the county for the purpose of economic development is their funding mechanism. So we're
And just to add to that,
we're not the major, we don't have majority interest or anything like that, even though we do contribute last year, what, 140,000?
40,000, yeah.
So.
And yeah, just to add to that, the major contributors to that organization are business entities within the county, by and large. That's who funds that organization. So it's a joint operation between government and business to help economic development. I think it's a very good effort. We shouldn't, we got to get it going right. It's going to help us move forward. So that's what I got to report.
I'll just for my report, we're continuing to work on the budget, and we're starting to hear things about the budget. We're looking for ways to trim the budget to soften the impact of taxes that people feel on property tax. But this is a process that we've just started, and the budget isn't approved until August, actually. So this is the discussion time. If people have thoughts or comments or want to follow along at our meetings in the work study, we'll be doing this for several months now.
Thank you. Ron?
I did spend quite a bit of time yesterday afternoon at the detention center in Junction City. The detention center consists of 13 counties involved with this. So this is a pretty big deal, but I go down there twice a week and check in on them and sign checks for them. They're doing quite well, but they're getting ready to do an expansion of partnering up with another entity to have room. We're running out of room. And I'd like to say, well, I wish we didn't have any of this, but fortunately there is crime. There is problems that need to be taken care of, and we need to protect our citizens. So that's why we do that. So Dickinson County is very involved with the detention center because it's part owner of the organization, which is a big organization. It's a big facility and operating pretty efficiently. But we all see, as I mentioned often here, costs going up so high that it's just sometimes a tough deal. But we're doing okay, and we're still in business and taking care of the folks that are there. So,
Thank you, Ron. Moving on to presentation, petition, proclamations. We have none. Now we'll open it up for any public comments. Before we do that, I will have the Assistant County Administrator, Marcus Rothschild, read the rules.
Per the Open Meetings Act, KSA 75-4317 and 75-4318A, as the elected board, the county commission is not allowed to meet or make any decisions without posting the meeting. They are only allowed to act on items on the agenda which they set. During their regular meeting, the county commission may allow for public comments on items not listed on the approved agenda. It is at the discretion of the county commission if they allow comments on agenda items. If you wish to provide comments, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address. If you are online, raise your hand and we will unmute you. State your name and address. Each person may speak for 3 minutes. The allotted time will start after the speaker has given his or her name and address. Public comments shall be addressed to the county commission only and not to the speaker or the audience. Only the county commission will be permitted to ask the speaker questions. The public comment period is not a back and forth discussion with the county commission. You should make your views and input known to them, but it is not a time to ask them questions. You should not expect them to respond to your comments. Comments may express support or agreement with previous speaker, but in the interest of time, please do not repeat the same information. You may state something to the effect of name and address, and I agree with the previous speaker. It is important to maintain a respectful, non-threatening atmosphere for anyone who would like to speak. Please do not engage in such actions as cheering, booing, clapping, insults, threats, etc.
Thank you. And going right back to you. Well, do we have any public comment? Sorry.
Let me look online here real quick. nobody has their hand raised.
Commissioners, any comments you'd like to make this time?
Comments here.
I want to mention, we received a book that Lance Holman had written, and so I appreciate him giving us that information. And it has justice-directed rehabilitation, I'm sorry, and treatment in Kansas. But it's when drug court isn't enough. So it's a personal writing that he has. So
Really? Yes.
appreciate him giving that to us.
Moving on, we'll go right back to you, Marcus. Assistant County Administrator and Finance Director, Marcus Rothschild, report.
Yes, thank you, Commission. 1400 Avenue Overlay Project. You approved that last week at your regular meeting. Right now, the estimated start time is in July, and they're expecting about 30 working days for that project. And that will run all the way from Eden Road to Union Road across 1400. The Public Works Department is prepping Old 40 West for the upcoming paving project. That's estimated to start May 19th, 2025. There are still currently some open positions in dispatch that we're trying to fill. Recently, just this week, so we've had some insurance claims that we had to put in for the hail damage that we had a couple weeks ago. There was about 7 vehicles that were damaged. 5 were sheriff's units, and then some EMS vehicles as well. And then right now we've identified at least the health department roof. An adjuster came out from K-Camp, and they are going to go ahead and review all of our facilities just to make sure that there was no damage. So if we basically just file one claim for buildings, they're going to go take a look at all of them. They'll let us know what they find. So we'll get an update of that as the information comes out.
Question on that. Is that roof, how old is that roof on that building? Really where I'm going with that is, are we still in the replacement area, or are we getting down into cost?
I think, you know,
You know what I'm trying to ask there?
Yeah, I do understand what you're trying to ask, and I'm not certain. I'll have to do some follow-up with K-Camp on our policy, actually, on what our
Okay.
portion will have to be covered
That's
on
a
that.
pretty good building, so that
It'll be pretty
could scare us a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll keep you updated. Probably by next week, I'll have a better update on the costs that we
Okay.
may be looking at.
Thank you.
The EMS director continues to work on setting up the community paramedic program. And actually, that vehicle, just so you know, that 2022 vehicle that was just purchased was one that
Got damaged?
got damaged already. So we had it about 2 weeks before.
So we're gonna delay this a little bit?
Unfortunately, but he's already got it scheduled with Home Automotive to have the repairs done. And so we've worked with K-Camp to make sure that we can continue forward. But just so you know, that sometimes timing doesn't work.
That's how it worked.
And then also the appraiser's office is currently working on their annual maintenance. That's what I'll have.
Any questions, Commissioners? No questions. County Councilor Doug Thompson. I know we got something to discuss later. You got anything else?
No, I'll just put a minute or two on this part of it. We've been working on the recovery, court recovery, and working with Junction City and Abilene, and trying to work through that for those who have been addicted to drugs, and trying to work through that situation. And that's been a task. It's 2 steps forward and sometimes 1 step back, or sometimes the other way. And we're trying to work through that, but there's a lot of good people working hard to give these folks a good opportunity to get away from these drugs. Never seen anything like it with the drugs that are out now, but we're hopeful that the ones that are involved in the program and the ones who will be involved in the program can work through and use this opportunity to make the changes in their lives. And that's all I have on that part right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
We do have one notice came in from the Kansas Department of Historic Society, or Kansas Historical Society, sorry. This is for the Prairie Farmstead, which is 178 Hawk Road in Hope, Kansas. It's listed under National Register of Historic Places on April 18th of 2025. That gives them some special incentives to help stay into the Historic Society. So congratulations, Prairie Farmstead. Thank you. No more notices or communications. We have no introduction or consideration of resolutions, no unfinished business. We have one thing in other business today, which Kenny Rawson, moved that we recess the executive session under the following exceptions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. We are going, gosh, this isn't written correctly. Okay, I move that we move into executive session to discuss attorney-client privilege. And the subject matter is going to be election. What did we say? Election.
Doesn't matter.
An election matter. In this executive session, I would request that all the county commissioners be present. The assistant county administrator and finance director, Marcus Rothschild, county clerk, and Doug Thompson, county counselor.
And we're gonna have Janelle.
Oh, sorry, and county administrator Janelle Dockendorf will be phoned into the meeting as well. I move that we recess for that at 11:16 for a period of 10 minutes and resume general session back at 11:26 a.m.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will break for executive session in 1 minute.
I'm gonna go ahead and dial it in.
You got it there?
Yeah.
I didn't read that one very good. Janelle didn't write it.
I remember that's part of the task.
Well, I don't think we do.
Hey, Janelle. We'll be going into executive session here in just about 30 seconds.
Go ahead, Dave.
You know?
Yeah.
I would motion that we resume regular session or meeting.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We left for executive session to discuss an election matter. No decisions were made in that executive session, so nothing to report out of that session. With that being said, if there's no further discussion today, commissioners,
I'll move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carries, we're adjourned.